Thank you, Alison, and welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us this morning, both in person and obviously via webcast. The main objective of today is not only to showcase the new and transformed KBR, but to present the key attributes that give us confidence to set out what this business and its people can do through to 2022. We have the full leadership team here today, many of whom you'll hear from, and the others are actually sitting in the audience. It's a true team, and interestingly enough, it's a true team that's actually engaged not just in their area of expertise, but across our whole portfolio. So when you meet the technology people, don't ask them about technology, ask them about LNG. And when you meet the LNG people like Farhan, don't ask them about LNG, ask them about government. And if you can't answer the question, come and tell me. So really, I think really the basis of that is that they're all in. Everybody's all in what you hear today. Everyone believes in the targets we set out. Everyone's actually been involved in actually developing and setting these targets out. And really our philosophy about this team ethos is a core part of who we are. So as I say, any company is only as strong as the people they have and the leadership they have, and that's absolutely true of KBR, considering we're a people company. But it's worth noting on this stage, I've stood here a couple of times now, but 2 years ago I stood here in 2017, and I made a firm statement that I believed that we had the right team to deliver what we set out as our targets at that point. And really, one of the key features of today is the fact that apart from someone who's retired and someone who's joined the team who's been with KBR a long time, that team is the same team as was in place in 2017. And I think that's really a bit like our results and a bit like our philosophy. That consistency speaks absolutely for itself. There's actually a picture on the back of the brochure, the little brochure there, and hands up who's looked straight to the numbers. But there's actually on the very back page, just as a mugshot of all the management team. And just so, in case you didn't recognize me, I'm actually wearing exactly the same suit, exactly the same shirt, and exactly the same tie. Embarrassingly, it is on that picture, but we're good. So, as many of you know, I usually start off with a safety moment, and today's no different. But I want to change the theme a little bit. We usually start off talking about our performance, but we did our earnings just a couple of days ago, and I think you saw how well we're doing. Today, I'd like to talk more about an environmental initiative that we're very proud of at KBR called One Ocean. One Ocean is, in essence, it's really a social responsibility and outreach program. And it's whereby KBR donates some money, obviously, but actually, more importantly, time to educate and really mentor school kids, I guess, the leaders of the future, about one of the most important environmental issues facing the planet today, and that's plastics in the seas and the oceans around the world. As a company, we are, of course, heavily involved in the oil and gas sector, and plastics, I think, are hugely important in the building materials and manufacturing sectors. But the responsible use of plastics, particularly when it's time to throw them out and throw them in the bin, is really critical for our future. So our engineers volunteer their time to talk about and mentor the school kids, really about technical solutions of the future, recycling options, and really just the responsible use of plastics. And our people have really embraced this. I mean, really embraced it to the extent not only do they give up time during the week, they actually give up their weekends to take the school kids to the beaches and do cleanups at the beaches to make sure they drive home how real this issue is. So it's a terrific initiative. It's actually kicked off in our UK business, and we're now rolling it out across the world. But typical to our culture, it's not being driven by the management. We're very supportive. It's actually a young professionals group, who we call Impact, that are driving this through the organization. There's been amazing sort of take-up of this. So it's been very, very impressive. I think we've rolled it out now in India. We're rolling it out in Saudi Arabia as we speak, and we'll continue to roll it out across the world. So terrific. KBR's philanthropy, you'll hear this a little bit from the presidents later, and the giving back to the communities in which we live and work is an absolute piece of a culture I love. I think the management team and the whole ethos of KBR support this, and we're rightly very proud of it. So, our vision. I'll give you a second just to read this. I'm not going to read the words. The key point here is this is exactly the same vision we presented in 2017. It hasn't changed. So coming back to that consistency and clarity of thought and where we're heading, it's another key message today. It speaks for itself. I recognize today's focus is really about tomorrow, and that's why you look straight to the numbers. But before we present our strategy and our numbers through 2022, and really the basis of what you see in the little brochures in front of you, I thought I would look back for a few moments. And why? So, in 17, we stood on the same stage. I presented our life cycle strategy, exactly the same as it is today, our key market dynamics, which have improved to today, and we tried to articulate our differentiators and really reinforce our strategic and commercial discipline, which all led to a set of growth targets. I think most in the audience at that point thought, well, there's a new management team. Yeah, maybe they'll get there. Those targets were aspirational, many thought in the audience. And I think we knew we had to earn credibility. You know, we knew we had to earn your trust. And really, we had to be consistent. We had to be predictable. And we actually simply had to achieve our targets, or even better, exceed them. And as we present today, I want you to reflect on that. I'm not going to read those out. You can see them. But please reflect on it, because we've outperformed all our key metrics. And reflect that this team, the team you'll meet today, has really delivered on their promise and returned KBR through 18 and obviously our first quarter results in 19 to really sustain growth. And reflect that our headcount, in fact, when I stood here in first time in 2014, we were 25,000 people. We're now close to 38,000 people, and in a people business, that's testament to the growth in itself. So I think, obviously, you've heard me say this a few times, and that is this is the 9th consecutive quarter of meeting or exceeding expectations. So we'll present today's targets that we believe are realizable. And of course, we think with a fair wind can be exceeded. We'll attempt to tell you how we will do this, and we'll attempt to tell you in what key markets. And you'll meet the team that delivered and is committed and bought into delivering these targets. Today's actually not a sales pitch. And I'll say this again, it's not a sales pitch. We view this as a true strategic engagement session with our stakeholders. And as a consequence of that, I'd really like you to take the time in the breakouts to ask the questions you want. We'll be as honest as we can in terms of our answers. And when the presidents are up here sitting on these fine seats, you know, grill them. Ask whatever you wish, and we'll be as straightforward as we can. It's really about trying to get that level of engagement today. We will not kill you with slides. I can assure you of that. You might have seen that we did launch something today, and that really is a unifying new brand. We unveil it today, the new brand and logo. Love it or hate it. I love it, by the way. It's a clear signal that we've shaken off the shackles of the past, and now is the time to change the conversation about KBR. A new GICS code would reinforce this. The brand was actually developed in-house by a fantastic team made out of a cross-section of our business, our own people. The team adopted an approach that I think is worth just talking about for a second, just to understand our culture. So we brought the team together and said, what would you like to do? We really think we need to change our look and our feel and our image. And instead of going out to an external consultant and spending lots of money, they decided to do it themselves. So they sent out a message to all of KBR, the whole 38,000 people, and said, right, we want some feedback. Should we change the name? Should we change the look? Should we change the image? What should we change? And there was absolute unity in response around the name. I think a lot of loyalty, a lot of long-term KBR people, the passion around the brand. I think a lot of customer respect was a big piece of that. So really no change of name then. But they were also unified in their response around the image. You know, it was very old in its look, And they wanted something that was more dynamic and more representative of who we are today. And like most brands, there's a wee story behind it. So let me explain it. So this year actually marks the 100th anniversary of Brown & Root, which is actually by default the 100th anniversary of KBR. So the globe is really a modern take on the old Brown & Root brand, which had a globe in its logo. So it really sort of strong connection to our history. It also represents a view from space, and that's very much representative of what we're doing today and really signifies our global presence and our beyond global capability. The squares, they recognize the digitalization of our business, and we'll talk more about that today. And the colors of the squares identify the domains in which we do our business. Light blue being the sky, dark blue being the ocean, green being the land, and of course black is space, correct. The free-flowing lines in the globe reflect our agility and our dynamic culture, combined with the solid capital letters of KBR. Dependable, bold, and enduring. So a more modern, more dynamic, more digital KBR, but still a strong link to our past and our proud history. The new brand and logo are accompanied by a more digital and updated website, and all roll out across KBR in unison across the globe on Monday. Quite an achievement and quite a level of organization by the team involved. So moving on, I kind of like to start at the end, if you like. Not really with the numbers, but the key takeaways we'd like you to think about. So we're going to try and demonstrate today that KBR has an advantage portfolio that's differentiated and has delivered, and will continue to deliver strong backlog. But not just backlog. Backlog with a quality of earnings that gives predictability and stability to our future. And we've talked about that many, many times, and that will be a theme again that comes through today. We'll also discuss the fact that we have a plan. How about that? We've actually got a plan. We're executing that plan. We think it's a really good plan, and we've got discipline in how we actually do that and how we identify the markets of the future and how we go in and out of those markets to realize our future potential. And we really do think that will deliver predictable growth, again, from healthy backlog, and if with a fair wind, will outperform our targets that we've given you today. So you'll also meet the management team. We've talked a lot about that already in my first little 5 minutes. We're going to have a round table. You're going to meet them up and close. They'll showcase aspects of their business. I want you to try and tease out a little bit of, why we have these businesses, why they're together, what's the commercial appetite, et cetera. So as I say, really test them. I really want you to give them a really hard time. We've spent a lot of money flying them up here. They've got to earn their supper. So please do that. But I think what you'll take away at the end is this is a true team. They're very collaborative, they're very experienced, and they're terrific. And I think we've created an environment within KBR that really allows that team to flourish. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And obviously, we're going to quantify our growth, but not just our growth. Last time we sat here, it was really about growth, but I think really the cash generative ability of this business, and Mark will articulate this later, it's not just about growth, it's also about value. So we will actually showcase why we're a true growth and value story, and we'll tell you how we're going to do it, we'll tell you what our priorities are, and we'll show you what that can do. So I guess before I sort of move on to allow Greg to talk about our strategy, I thought up front, I thought it might be helpful, as many as you know, we're kind of outpacing the industry in government growth, we're outpacing the industry in technology, and I think we're very well positioned in our oil and gas businesses in really energy solutions. And really when you look at that business itself, everyone goes back to year on year, but if you looked at the last 3 quarters, even in energy solutions, we're actually upticking a little bit in the last 3 quarters. So I think we've really stabilized that business with a very strong underlying platform of services work. So why are we doing so well? Why are we winning? I think firstly, and Greg will talk more about this, we're very well positioned in the markets that we think are attractive of the future. It's at the subsector level. Everyone talks about Department of Defense spending and things like that, but we're actually trying to really focus in areas where we have deep domain knowledge and a true understanding that these markets are actually exciting for the future. And Greg will talk each of these 5 and show you some key things and themes within each of those markets. And I think really he'll also try and explain to you how we strategically exploit the opportunities in these markets. The second component, because you can go into any market, but if you don't have the right capability or the right strength, then you can't succeed. So we're very, very deliberate of lining up our capability and strength to the markets that we're in. But also, I think culturally, it's about being honest. You know, everyone really talks about their strengths, but we're also very, very honest about our weaknesses. I think when you start to say what you're good at and what you're not really good at, you can identify where you've got to do better, where you can actually build capability, or where you just simply don't compete. Because the only way you're going to win is on price, and we're not interested in that. We're on value. So I think you'll hear more on this, really a disciplined approach when Greg is here, but also from the presidents when they're up on the stage in terms of that capability piece. And you know, I talked about this before in terms of earning your trust. We actually believe that that's a core part of what we have to do with our customers. That reputation is everything. Our reputation is everything. Once you lose your reputation, it's so difficult to get it back. And so, you know, we really think that, I mean, you've seen this with what we've done with our results. Actually doing what you say you're going to do. I know it sounds like a groundbreaking thing to do, but it's actually just a given in KBR. We just do what we say we're going to do. And I think that has really resulted in a lot of customer trust, a great relationship build with a lot of our stakeholders, including, of course, our customers. And it's really resulted in amazing long-term relationships. And I'm going to just show you a few here and just look at the length of tenure of those relationships. And we call that our installed customer base. And it really represents, I guess, the stickiness, if you like, of the relationships we have. And it really sort of drives, as you'll see from Mark, our ability to look into the future because we've got so many long-term relationships and a lot of long-term contracts. And that allows that predictability. That allows us to stand behind the targets we're going to present later. So we're in the right markets. We've got the right capability. We've got some good customers that really like what we do. We're very externally focused. And I hear you thinking, well, everyone stands up and says that, don't they? What's really different about KBR? Well, quite simply, and I mean quite simply, but it's not simple, it's our people. You know, the team ethos, the culture, our ability and desire to collaborate, it really helps realize the synergies that you're seeing that are delivering the growth. Our realism, we're realists at KBR. We know we're not perfect, we know we're good at some things and not so good at others. And we have a lot of soul searching about what we're good at and what we're not good at. And that really ensures that we deliver. We can actually deliver what we say we're going to deliver on our promises, and that earns that sustainable relationship. And I think the other piece really about our whole ethos, and this is quite important in today's world, and I really want you to think about this in the context of how fast the world is changing today. If there's any company who can stand on the stage and say, you know what, we kind of embrace change, the transformation of KBR has proven that we embrace change, that we're strategic about change, but we manage change in a very positive way. And that's a very powerful statement, I think, in today's world. So this is, in essence, one KBR. This is the secret sauce. This is what makes us different. And you'll see an employee video later on, but apart from the end, I'll say that right up at the beginning, the end of the video is scripted, and you'll see that. But apart from the end of the video, nothing in it is scripted. We went out and asked our people what they thought about certain aspects of KBR, and these are the things they came back with. Team culture, something we're very proud of. No limit to personal achievement. Exciting, global, smart people. Really, really powerful in terms of hearing that directly from our own employees. So you'll get to see that later. But I understand that I'm very passionate about our people. I get that I talk a lot about our culture. But I also get the fact that I recognize for you in particular, there needs to be an output from all of that, and a shareholder value output at that. So, KBR, a growth story, and Mark will talk about the value piece of this later as well, but I thought it would be good to just start off here. When I stood here in 2017, we put these targets up. I don't think you believe the yellow line. You certainly didn't believe the blue line. And the share price would reflect that. Lots of skepticism, and we had to prove, and I get that, we had to prove that we could deliver on what we set out. And these were not easy targets, by the way. These were above industry growth norms. So what did we achieve up until now? Well, that's where we're at. So we're well above, I guess, the base and the breakout sort of scenarios we set out in 2017. The business has performed fantastically well. And we've realized synergy that we, in truth, didn't even know existed at the time, but our strategic processes allows us to identify it as time has gone on. So what does that mean for the future? So that's what we're thinking of today, and Mark will give you the actual numbers associated with that. But really, I guess the key takeaway is that our base case is now our breakout case from 17. Okay. And you think, well, that's quite an ambitious target, but if you break it down and just step back, we're delivering double-digit growth in our government services business without any extraordinary events. For 10 years, we've been delivering, compound annual growth rates of about 13% in our technology business. And when you look at our oil and gas business, if you break it into two components, the services piece, the maintenance, and we announced a couple of maintenance wins in the last few days, that's really going well. We're double-digit growth in our services business. And Jay will give you some numbers around that later when he's talking. But really, all up that, they're growing double digits. And then you start to look at the big project business and I guess the recurrence of LNG and other large project opportunities. And so it's an exciting time, and we really, really stand behind these, and we've got such a lot of backlog already baked into our business to deliver these targets, and Mark will show you what that is later. But the way we set this out, just to put it in context, is the bottom end of that range, so the bottom of the green bar, is with 0 LNG projects. Okay, so we can achieve that growth, we can achieve those targets without taking on any LNG. And why are we setting it out that way? Because it really demonstrates that we can deliver double-digit growth without rushing to the finishing line, without booking anything that doesn't make sense, without actually booking backlog that doesn't make money. We've talked about commercial discipline. We've given ourselves the right, we've given ourselves the platform to make the right decision. And the top end of the range is 1 mid-size LNG project, just 1. Again, you could argue that's prudent, you could argue it's conservative. You could argue we're sandbagging a little bit, but you've got to get a lot of things right to get that to work. So I think it's extremely prudent to put that range in there. And these are good targets. This is well above industry norms. But we stand behind them. We've got the backlog to deliver them. We've got the market to deliver them. And then, of course, you'll hear Fahan talk about the number of LNG projects that we have on the books today. And it doesn't take much to get into a breakout growth scenario. So that's really the teaser, if you like. That's kind of where we're heading from a compound annual growth perspective, from an EPS per share. I think we're heading firmly in the right direction. And by the end of today, much like we did in 17, we'll set out those targets. The difference today is we've done it. We told you what we're going to do, and we did it. And I think that earns us at least a bit of credibility in terms of what we're talking about in the future. So with that, I'll hand over to Greg, who will now take you through our strategy. Thank you.